What up, guys? Welcome to the Son of Wonder. Venom: The Last Dance has arrived at theaters, and I have seen it, so let's conversationalize. Alright, guys, so Venom: The Last Dance. I'm just gonna cut straight to the chase and say this movie was at least fun. There's so many dumb moments, but the trailers set you up for dumb moments, so you were expecting it. My first part of this review is probably going to be non-spoiler, and then I'm going to move on to the spoilers, and the non-spoiler part of it is not going to be very long at all. Because, I have had extended thoughts on this franchise as a whole. I think it was a bad decision in the first place to make a whole Venom franchise and not even have any remote ties to Spider-Man. Like, try and do Venom's origin story without Spider-Man, because his origin story in the comics is so tied to Spider-Man that it just seems so weird and wrong to do it without Spider-Man. So, one of the other insanely crazy things for me regarding this trilogy is the fact that we had a Venom trilogy before we had a Fantastic Four trilogy. We had a Venom trilogy before we had a Silver Surfer trilogy. We had a Venom trilogy before we had a Hulk trilogy. I don't know how that's possible, but that is the day and age that we're living in. It's freaking weird. But anyway, we have a Venom trilogy, and on its own merit, I think that the movies are at the very least entertaining. And this movie is no different. Story-wise, all three of these movies are terribly flawed. Not any one of them, I think, could be actually considered, well done or good job, genuinely. But they did do a good job entertaining people. They didn't put any woke stuff in it. They didn't put any agendas in it or anything like that. They just wanted to entertain people. And Tom Hardy is a phenomenal entertainer. He's a phenomenal actor. And he is the no holds bar, possibly the only great thing about this trilogy. The CGI is really good too. That's also great. But Tom Hardy mainly is a phenomenal choice for Venom. He does a phenomenal job at playing off himself, with him talking to Venom, who is played by himself. That part of it is great. He's always been a phenomenal actor, and he continues to be a phenomenal actor in this movie. So, that's basically my non-spoiler review. As far as the movie itself is concerned, there's not really a lot to talk about other than it was entertaining. As far as story goes, like I said, it's, it exists. I think a large part of this movie, without spoilers, is to set up other things coming down the road. It seems like this movie's kind of devoted to that. And, it doesn't have a lot of merit on its own other than what it promises for the future. So with that, I'm going to get right into some spoilers, so you've been warned. And I'm not going through the whole movie at all. I'm not going through the whole movie. I'm going to talk about a few things that involve spoilers. So, to establish the basic plot, in the post-credit scene for Spider-Man No Way Home, we see that Eddie is talking to the bartender in Mexico. The bartender's telling him about all the different crazy things in the MCU, and then Eddie gets transported back to his own universe. And so we leave off from that in this movie. We actually see the bartender scene again, but done very slightly differently, and then we see him teleported back into Eddie's own universe. And from there, the movie literally just kicks off. They waste no time. They just start. And I'm totally okay with that. I don't want any, major, long setup or anything. I'm totally fine with them just starting the plot. So, Eddie realizes that he's still a fugitive. Eddie realizes that there's still people who are going to look for him and try to capture him, try to find him. Because they think that Eddie murdered the people that Carnage murdered in the last Venom movie, and Let There Be Carnage. And so Eddie's solution to all of this is, there was apparently a guy in New York that kicked him out of New York when he was still a journalist, and Eddie's like, maybe I could blackmail the guy to let me stay in New York and lay low. So, I do like that they're still, trying to cement the fact that, Eddie's not a good person. He's still a bad guy. But again, they're still, just doing the anti-hero thing, because at this point they've just doubled down on it. But he's still not really a superhero. He's an anti-hero. But bottom line is, he heads for New York. The whole movie is, well, at least for the first half, is Eddie trying to get to New York. That and another thing with the plot where there's these scientists who have collected a bunch of other symbiotes that landed on Earth via a meteor. The symbiotes were captured by this military guy named Strickland and these other scientist people who want to study the symbiotes and figure out why they're there and all that. So that's like the very basic plot, or at least as it starts in the film. And then, from there, a bunch of hijinks ensues. You get some good action in here, some good, tension moments. Big thing to talk about in here, my favorite part by far of the whole movie, was basically the part that lasted the least amount of time. Was the movie, opens, the very first scene isn't anything to do with Eddie, it's establishing Null as the villain. And I've talked about Null in some of my previous videos regarding this movie. Null is basically a relatively recent character established in the comics, but he created the symbiotes. And he's basically like Space Sauron. That's a fairly decent way to describe it. He's like Space Sauron, and the symbiotes are kind of like the orcs. Except, in this case, the symbiotes rebelled against Null, and that's what we get at the beginning of this movie. We get, first of all, Andy Serkis plays Null, and he does a phenomenal job. That's one of my favorite parts about Andy Serkis as an actor, is even if they give him a really short amount of time to do anything in a movie, he makes the best of that time no matter what. He never does anything halfway. He always brings his all into any role, even if it's a very small one. And Null's only in this movie for a grand total of a minute. or maybe two. But Andy Serkis does the voice for Null, the narration, and it feels like something straight out of Lord of the Rings or something like that, establishing lore regarding Null, and he says it in this very deep voice, I was betrayed by his whole performance and the whole deal with Null is freaking awesome. And we will get back to that because it does establish something interesting, or an interesting possibility for the future. So that opening was amazing. I freaking love the opening, and I thought that was a great way to start off the movie. And so, as the movie goes along, like I said, hijinks ensue, good action sequences. My criticisms mainly are, I don't feel like Venom had a ton of stuff as far action-wise to do in the movie. He's mostly running away from stuff. He's not really fighting a lot. And so I wish that Venom got to do more stuff action-wise, especially for supposedly the last Venom film. Also, the plot does kind of just meander a little bit. He's going to New York, and then he, tags along with these hipsters who want to see Area 51, which is right beside where the scientists are doing, studying the symbiotes and all that. And the hipster thing continues to be a subplot throughout the movie for some reason. The characters stay in the film, and they end up at the final battle, and they have to get saved by Venom and some other symbiotes that come into play, and it's just very unnecessary. You didn't need... Especially, Reese... I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. Reese Ifans, something like that, plays the main, hipster dad of the hipster family. And he played Kurt Connors in the first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man. So, everybody was thinking, oh, I wonder what they're going to do. I wonder why they're casting Reese Ifans, or however you pronounce his name, again in this movie. Are they going to do something with that? Are they going to tie him to Lizard in some way? Is he going to have any level of importance? Nope. He is a hipster dad. I don't know why. And it's funny because the guy who plays the military guy, Strickland, is the same guy who plays Baron Mordo in the MCU, in the first Doctor Strange movie, and the second one as well. And in this case, he's like an MCU casting, but he's in this movie. No connection, no ties, didn't do anything with it. It was just I don't know why they did that, but okay. Bottom line is, Venom is also being hunted by these things called the xenophages, who are working for Null, because Null needs to I'm trying to make sure I understand this, to capture Venom, to get something called the Nexus out of Venom, because the Nexus can set Null free from the prison he's currently trapped in, which the symbiotes trapped him in. And then some of the other symbiotes are running away from Null because they know that he might be set free. At least I think that was what was going on. I was paying more attention to the entertainment side of it. A lot of the other stuff just kind of blended together. But yeah, so the xenophages are hunting Venom for Null, and then the military guys are hunting Venom for the scientists. And so eventually the military guys capture Venom, and then that's where the final battle happens. And basically the summary of the final battle is a bunch of the symbiotes whom the scientists captured get on the scientists to become new symbiote creatures like Venom, and the collection of scientist symbiotes start to fight the xenophages. And in case you're wondering if there was a time lapse in making this video, yes there was. But anyway, continuing. Venom, basically, summary of the finale is Venom tries to run away from the xenophages as long as he can, but eventually Venom and Eddie kind of come to this conclusion of it's not happening. They're never going to be able to get away. The xenophages are always going to be hunting them. One of them's got to go. And so they kind of both had this very somber and serious moment of deciding to sacrifice themselves for everybody else and destroy the xenophages. So Eddie walks out and just lets all the xenophages come to him, and then he, Venom forms the symbiote around them, trapping them all together, and then Venom kicks Eddie out of Venom and ends up saving Venom, while Venom, with all the xenophages, goes to this, acid-spewing sprinkler thing that was introduced earlier in the movie at that same compound that the scientists are at, and Venom destroys all of the xenophages with himself included, and also Strickland destroys himself by pulling the pin on a grenade, and he blows everybody up. So the acid and the explosion destroy Venom and the xenophages together along with Strickland. And then Eddie is unconscious from, everything that happened. Then he wakes up in a hospital bed. And there's this military high command guy there that basically tells Eddie, hey, you're free of all charges, because I assume the scientist girls that Venom saved told the military guy what Eddie had done for them and saving everybody along with Venom. So I guess that's why the military guy knows that Venom helped save the world, so there you go. And so the final shot of the movie is Eddie at New York, walking through the streets of New York, and he goes to see the Statue of Liberty, and it's a bittersweet moment because Venom had wanted to see the Statue of Liberty when they got to New York. That was the thing he wanted to do most, was see the Statue of Liberty. And that was the thing that he said to Eddie before they decided to sacrifice themselves. Venom's like, well, I really wish I could have seen it, but I guess I won't be able to. And that's basically it. That's the whole movie. And like I said, there's not a ton to go off of here. There's two post-credit scenes. One post-credit scene is basically Null, even though he was defeated when Venom destroyed himself, that destroyed presumably the Nexus. So that was supposed to keep Null in prison, but I guess Null is not going to be in prison. I guess he might find some other way to get out. I don't really know. But that's the first post-credit scene, is him saying, hey, I'll be back. I'm coming back. And that's pretty much it. And again, I love Andy Serkis as Null, so the idea of this character coming back to be the villain of the next movie of whatever next movie they do, is really cool. It just depends on what they make him the villain of and how good the writing is, like always. But Andy Serkis as Null, in and of itself as a concept, is just phenomenal and well done in this movie. The second post-credit scene is really random, and I'm not even exactly sure what it's meant to imply. It's this bartender guy who was captured by the military guys at the beginning of the movie. He sees the aftermath of the battle at the compound where the scientists were at, and he starts freaking out and running away. And there's this cockroach that crawls by this vial, and it's a vial that they were keeping symbiotes in. So I guess the implication of the post-credit scene is a symbiote, Venom possibly, could get on the cockroach and escape. So it's possible that Venom could survive. And even when Venom says goodbye to Eddie before, he makes that final move and allows Strickland to destroy him and the xenophages with the grenade and all that, both of them and the xenophages, he says to Eddie, he's like, goodbye for now. So they definitely leave it semi-open in a way. And also at the end of the first movie, there's this moment where you think Venom's dead and then he comes back, or he's revealed to have survived. So I think that's why the emotion of the movie didn't fully hit for me. I think that the last scene of Eddie walking through New York, and there's this moment where they're montaging through the memories of him with Venom, and they play a song, and it's that's an emotional moment enough. It works well enough. But these movies are just so goofy and silly. But Sony loves their sequels so much, and they clearly want to milk the Spider-Man franchise as much as possible. So even though Tom Hardy has said, and you know, it seems like that this is supposed to be the last and final Venom movie, it certainly didn't feel like. It felt like they were trying to do that. They were trying to convince the audience that this was the last one, but somewhere in there they're like, but we're going to do something again later. Like, this is not the last you'll see of Venom. Otherwise, why would they have those post-credit scenes? It would be a really weird choice to bring Noel as the villain of another movie later on and not have Venom in it. When Venom is the character that's most closely tied to Noel, you wouldn't want that connection, but if they do it without Venom, that's going to be really strange. And so, in short, even though the movie was entertaining and enjoyable enough, it did what it was, you know, it set out to do. I think it doesn't really do anything for the Sony universe. It doesn't help it out at all, certainly. It just kind of caps off this trilogy that exists. It is a trilogy about a character that people love. And I think probably as a trilogy, if you watch them like in order, they'd make for an entertaining movie marathon. So there's that. But other than that, as far as like substance goes, as far as like people remembering the Venom movies, I think the main thing people are going to remember these movies for is just how goofy they were and how weird of a and stupid of a choice it was to make a whole Venom verse and hardly include Spider-Man whatsoever. Like in one post-credit scene and let there be carnage. So it's just, the whole thing is frustrating. Again, it makes for an entertaining trilogy, and this final movie was okay. Not super memorable, but also not a disgrace because the previous two movies kind of already did enough damage to the character of Venom, I think, by not including Spider-Man and not getting the meat of that story in there. So at that point, the third movie, if you're gonna double down, you might as well double down. So that's what this movie did, and it did all the things that, you know, it didn't do anything that offended me or anything like that. It did what I expected, so that's basically the long and short of it. So we have a Venom trilogy now. Again, before Silver Surfer, before Hulk, before this, before that. So, yeah, that is the way of the world currently. So, thank you guys for watching. Have a very blessed day. May the Lord be with you. May the Force be with you. Goodbye. And that's a wrap.